Hello and welcome to the program. I am Deji Badimasi. Almost a year after the United States requested the extradition of suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police, now Abba Kyari, the federal government of Nigeria has finally initiated a move for Kyari to be extradited to the U.S. The U.S. had demanded Kyari'S extradition in April 2021 over his alleged involvement in a wire fraud by internet fraudster Abbas Ramon, popularly known as Hush Puppy. Now, this development comes as a shock because it was widely believed that the request might not be granted due to Kyari'S arrest and planned arraignment in court by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, that's NDLEA, for international drug trafficking. But of course, that is not to be. This is because the Nigeria Extradition Act now restrains. Now, the reason for that is that the Nigeria Extradition Act now restrains the government from acceding to any extradition request in a case of a person who is facing a criminal charge in the country. The approval for his extradition was, however, confusing when the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami filed an application before the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court in Abuja on Wednesday. The AGF explained that having regard to all the circumstances in which the offense was committed, it will not be unjust to surrender the suspended ACP, that's Assistant Commissioner of Police, of course, Assistant Commissioner of Police actually, because he had actually been recommended for demotion. He also added that the request of the surrender of Kyari was not intended to prosecute or punish him on account of his race, religion, nationality, or political opinions, but in good faith and the interest of justice. Joining me now to make sense of all this is Monday Ubani, who is a legal practitioner and, of course, the chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association section on Public Interest and Development Law, SPIDL. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let me help us to make some legal sense of this. We know that there's a law in the country that says an individual cannot be extradited to another country if that individual is facing a criminal charge in court here. Of course, it's true that Abba Kyari has not been charged to court, but the expectation is that he would eventually be charged to court.
The situation. I was also shocked when I learned about that the federal government has acceded to the request of America in order to actually extradite Abba Kyari. Of course, it's a judicial process. The application was filed by the Attorney General, who says he's satisfied with the fact that the trial in America has no political undertone or religious undertone, and that the circumstances of the case warrant that he should be taken to America for trial, which means the government is satisfied now to do what the Americans want about Abba Kyari. They want him in America to face the trial alongside with Hush Puppy. Hush Puppy, of course, has pleaded guilty and waiting sentencing. The situation you have mentioned with the act is something that the court will have to take a decision on. And I'm seeing it, there is going to be a long legal process. If the court decides that he cannot, based upon the act itself that says if you are facing criminal trial, the government may go on appeal. So I see this going to up to Supreme Court. Or even if the court says, oh, he can't be extradited, I see that Abba Kyari may likely go to Court of Appeal and probably to Supreme Court. So it's not going to be a one-day affair where, as they have taken him to Federal High Court, the court will just make that pronouncement and they will just bundle him to America. You still have to go the entire legal process in Nigeria with the appellate options that are available. You have to go to Court of Appeal, and possibly if you are dissatisfied, you go to Supreme Court if the Court of Appeal rules otherwise. So that is actually what I expect in this matter.
Yeah, it's good you're making that very clear, because the impression some people are getting is that, look, the moment the Attorney General made that application in court, that it was more or less a done deal, and that is just for the court to give the approval, and then he'd be bundled on a plane and sent to the U.S.
No, that is actually not true. As I said earlier, is a judicial process. And taking it to court means that the court must have to examine the evidence and examine what the circumstances and what the story is before they can make a pronouncement. And any of the party that is not satisfied with the judgment of the court has a right to go to a court of appeal. And if you are not satisfied with the court of appeal, of course, you know how long it takes for decisions of such nature to be decided in court of appeal. It may take up to 2 or 3 more years after decision of the Federal High Court. Then to Supreme Court may take additional 5 years. So it's going to be a process. But as I said earlier, a lot of people were really also insinuating with this drug case involving Abba Kyari. Immediately it was announced, some people were saying, look, it is a way for federal government to actually ensure that they may not want to take Abba Kyari to America, because the moment you are charged of facing criminal trial, you cannot, because that is what the law says, that they may have public contrived.
And then let me ask you this. Look, it's true that no formal charge has been brought against Abba Kyari by the NDLEA, but the fact is that down the line, that will definitely happen. I mean, the NDLEA cannot continue to keep him for too long. I mean, there's a period, I think, a period that the court has allowed them to keep him for. So obviously, they would have to bring up a criminal charge against him. They would have to arraign him in court. Now, what happens? The Attorney General has filed this application now before a court. So what happens if the NDLEA now brings up charges against him and arraigns him in court? What happens then? Because that is likely to happen.
Yeah, that is very much likely to happen. I think between this, tomorrow and next week, I expect that Abba Kyari will be charged by NDLEA. And I'm sure in the light of this revelation now that they have filed an application for his extradition, it is possible that NDLEA will come up with a formal charge. If it doesn't happen tomorrow, I can assure you within next week, Abba Kyari will be charged formally. Now, if Abba Kyari is charged formally, that actually will give the defense a very good reason to tell the court that he's actually going to hear the application, that Abba Kyari cannot be extradited because he's facing a formal charge here in Nigeria. It will be a defense for the defense. It is going to be a defense for the defendant. And his lawyers will actually capitalize on this formal charge in order to make a case for him so that he will not be extradited. Now, whatever decision the court will reach, I can assure you will be appealed upon. If the decision of the court is that Abba Kyari should be extradited, I am very sure that Abba Kyari himself, with his lawyers, will go on appeal, because according to them, according to what they will say, is that decision was reached wrongly, because there has been a provision in the law that says if he's facing a formal charge, you can't extradite him.
But what about if the charge is different from the case that because in this clearly now the case he has with the NDLEA is allegedly now is a case of drug trafficking, and the one with the one that the U.S. needs him for has to do with wire fraud. Could that argument be made? I don't really understand. Could that argument be made that, look, these are different cases, and so...
Yeah, it's a very valid question you have asked. The provision of the law is very critical. If the law says any other charge other than the one he's going to face in America, of course, it includes the drug charge. But if it has to do with the charge of wire fraud, and he is not being charged for wire fraud, that would be a very good case for the federal government. The federal government will say that what he's being charged has to do with drug and related drug incident, and has nothing to do with the wire offense for which he is going to face in America. That would be a very solid argument for the federal government. It depends on that provision, what it says. Is it a similar offense that is being charged in America, or a different offense entirely, or just any former criminal offense that is facing in Nigeria? But I think the law would have made a provision for let it be the same charge in America that he is facing here. That is the reason why they would not be able probably to take him to America until he finishes the charge that are here. But
because
if he has to do
question
with a different charge entirely, like this drug incident, I can assure you that the court will, despite what particular charge that he is facing, extradite him to America, because the issue of wire fraud has nothing to do with drug that is presently facing.
And another question I'd want to ask you is, does it then mean that if the federal government chose to, say, press ahead with the extradition process, Wouldn't the federal government be essentially or literally saying, look, you know what, we're ready to forego your case on drug trafficking and you just go, go and answer to go and answer for what the U.S. wants you for. So we're not interested in prosecuting you for drug trafficking, at least for now. We're putting that aside. Go and is that what we're going to get? Because I'm just trying to make sense of all of this.
Yeah, that is also a possibility. If the federal government feels, maybe due to political pressure from America, that they must give up Abba Kyari, and they have looked at it that, look, they want to maintain a good relationship with America. They don't want to offend America. They can now probably forego the former charge on drug and take him to America straight away, because the judicial process will not recognize any charge that has not been formally presented before the court. There must be a formal charge. So in the absence of any formal charge, there is nothing that can actually inhibit the court from making the extradition order that he should be taken to America. So it's all depending the way the federal government is reasoning. But I think that from the look of things, if you look at the response of the Attorney General, I think that was last week or 2 weeks' time, when he was asked, he said that they were in discussion with America. They have almost concluded the issue of extradition process. So it may be that the government has actually made up their mind that they need to cooperate with America with regards to this issue of extradition of Abba Kyari and give him up completely so that he can go and face the trial over there. That may be the thinking one will get. But you see, you cannot know the mind of the government until things begin to probably unfold with this application. If there is no formal charge this week, if there is no formal charge next week, I am probably going to think that the last option you've mentioned may be the option that the government wants to pursue. They may not want to bring any formal charge against Abba Kyari, and what they will want in the circumstance for him to have, no inhibition from the order to be made, so that he can be taken to America for trial, so that they can probably, maintain the good and cordial relationship they have with America. It all depends on the issue of issue of national interest. What's the interest of America? America and Nigeria in this regard. Nigeria may want to sacrifice Abba Kyari in order to ensure that they maintain cordial relationship with America, or they may also want to blow it and damn the consequence and say, look, we have a formal charge. And if the formal charge, is related to what is going to be charged in America, they may want to retain me here. So it's all depending on all the things we have analyzed this evening, what is going to play out. Does that criminal offense is charged in America, does it have to be the same offense here, which will mean that they will not want to take him abroad? But if it's not a similar offense, it then means that they are free to extradite him. Now, we then want to not to present any formal charge so that it becomes easier for the court now to make an order extraditing him. These are all the possibilities we have looked at, and I think that the government will take one of those options and probably sacrifice Abba Kyari, or they may not want to sacrifice him. But next week we determine all these things that we have just analyzed now.
It's a very complex and complicated situation. We just have to see how it all plays out. Eventually, the courts will have the final say. Thank you very much, Mr. Albani, for joining us on the program and for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, after several protests and agitations, the bill seeking to grant full financial and administrative autonomy to local governments have been finally passed by the National Assembly. The bill seeks to amend the Constitution to repeal the state joint local government account and provide for a special account where all allocations due to local government councils from the Federation account and state government shall be paid. In the bill, each local government council is to create and maintain its own special account to be called Local Government Allocation Account, into which all the allocations will be paid. The legislations also mandate each state to pay to local government councils in its area of jurisdiction now such proportion of its internally generated revenue on such terms and in such manner as may be prescribed by the State House of Assembly. For administrative autonomy, the bill seeks to allow local governments to conduct their own elections. Meanwhile, the lawmakers also voted in favor of financial autonomy for state houses of assembly and judiciary. Now, what does this mean for the independence of grassroots governance in this country? Joining me to discuss this further is a legal practitioner, Malaki Ugumadu. Malaki, we know this is not the end of the process, but is it time to start jubilating?
Well, if we start jubilating now, it may be short-lived. It will be better that we remain vigilant and appreciate that it takes a while, particularly regarding what must happen with respect to the concurrence of other federating units to bring this to a logical conclusion.
So, just as we were saying, you say it's not part of the reasons, of course, why you must have said it's not a time to jubilate is because, I mean, anything can still happen because you never can tell what might happen at the state level, considering the influence that some of these governors wield over their state houses of assembly. I mean, they may just choose to go against the position of the National Assembly. So we just don't know how it will play out.
Yeah, precisely my point. And that in the political configuration of Nigeria, the state governors have managed to constitute themselves into a very powerful bloc. And until you understand the locus of power in contemporary Nigerian politics, you probably will be dissipating the energy in the wrong direction. And that what has happened at the moment is that the bill has scaled through at the National Assembly, which is the legislature, given the importance of the aspect of the Constitution sought to be amended, just like you have the areas concerning the fundamental human rights. In some other cases, the creation of states, and so on and so forth. You need the concurrence of the state houses of assembly. In this case, I think two-thirds majority of the entire state houses of assembly, which is about 24 state houses of assembly. That is quite enormous. And until you get that, you may win the war, but the battle will continue to rage.
Now, this amendment, the issue of local government autonomy, why is it so very important?
Well, I think for me, it is even to backtrack a bit. And I'm happy that you are one of the very senior journalists in this country who have sought our views on this matter. I have taken a very clear stance on the continued amendment of the 1999 Constitution. If this passes, we'll be having the fifth alteration. I had committed my thoughts to writing, to say that I had the privilege of examining this Constitution in 1999, just 2 weeks when it came into force. And we had seen multiple, almost an entire Constitution fraught with irregularities as far as a federal Constitution needed to be structured. And so I make the point again that there won't be an end to this amendment. Just as you are finishing one, the other will become necessary and so on and so on. But we put that aside. Your question is to the effect that where we are at the moment is the propriety of the autonomy sought to be vested in the local government councils. Let's be clear about it. In a proper federation, you have the just opposition of state powers at two levels, just two levels. The center, which is the federal government, and the federating units. It is the states, which are the federating units, that has the responsibility to deal with local councils in any way and manner they choose to. depending on the convenience and the exigency of those respective states. And make no mistake about it, it is not expected to be uniform. It cannot be uniform because the federating units are not uniform themselves. But here, the country has lumped the whole thing together, where you now have 3 tiers of government and thereby running into more convoluted problems. So you have section 7, for instance, which expressly dictates that local governments shall be run democratically through elections. That happens more often in breach than in obedience or compliance. You go to section 162, it makes an elaborate plan about the federation account and how it will be distributed. And then in subsection 5 and 6 of the same section 162, it runs into another cul-de-sac by saying that there shall be what is to be known as state local government joint account. And that monies meant for this local government shall be paid to the states. That is the provenance. That is the constitutional foundation of the crisis in the entire local government system in Nigeria at the moment. In which case, what the governors just simply do is to take that money, decide what happens with that money, appropriate it, and choose to give out just enough to deal with overheads. That is what you call salaries. So they barely exist other than gathering people to come and take salaries at the end of the month. I give you a practical example because I'm somewhat involved. Just December here, considering the years of deprivation and denial, which people like us have, cried out over, have voiced out in condemnation, we decided in my very impoverished local governments in Delta State to embark on self-help, providing street electrification through provision of solar lights and so on and so forth. We got speedboats, even as much as borehole water. Those remedial efforts to make sure that we vest on our people some measure of humanity. And what is more, we invited the local government officials, including the chairman, to be part of the official ceremonial inauguration. And I did not allow that moment to go by informing them as they gathered there that we're Nigerians, this time around, victims of lack of leadership, now out of their own volition and effort, pay through their nose to provide social services and invite state actors who ought to provide those services in this place for the ceremonial commissioning. That is the worst indictment to governments at that level. I just use this example to paint the poverty of the situation. But to underscore the point that you made, that the whole essence of local government administration is to bring governance to the local communities, to the local environment. There are people in this country, communities in this country, that will never notice what government and governance is until eternity. But when you have a functional local government structure, local government council, you are likely going to have in these remote entities the presence of governance in a way that brings about, that renews the confidence of the people that they are part of the country, part of the local environment, and are recognized as such. All of these have very far ripple effects. One, it gives them a sense of belonging. In the process of such engagement, employments are created. If employments are created, it reduces the incidence of crime and the tendency to resort to self-help and criminal activities. And it even impacts on the general security of the environment, because where people are now engaged one way or the other, the business of governance can go on.
I think we'll just have to leave it there because we're actually out of time. Let's just wait and see how the process goes from here, especially at the state level, and let's just hope that this is seen to its conclusion, and then that everything that local government truly get local governments now get their autonomy, so to speak, and let's hope that will bring about better performance at the local government level. Malaki,
Correct.
Thank you very much for joining us on the program and for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. But when they get that autonomy, there must be mechanisms, including civil society participation, to ensure that they don't go overboard.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Well, that's how much we can take on the program this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.